No, I'm not signing up for public comment. I'm just gonna quietly recuse myself.
We will go ahead and take roll call. Ryan Haney,
Here.
Ray Douglas, June Elkins Baker,
Here.
Leslie Nesmith, Hannah Royce,
Here.
Stephen Buck.
Here.
All right, we are now going to move on to item 1, public comment. No public comment. We will move to the introduction of the members. So whoever wants to begin.
I'll begin. June Elkins Baker.
Hannah Royce.
Ryan Haney.
Stephen Buck.
Ray Douglas.
All right, and we will now be moving on to the discussion to elect chair and vice chair to the Policies and Procedures Subcommittee.
I would entertain a Stephen Buck being our chair. I really appreciate the way he conducts business, and those are my 2 cents. So I'll leave it up to my other cab members.
Second that.
I second. Okay.
If you are willing, Mr. Buck.
All right, the motion for Buck as the chair of the committee. Ryan Haney,
Yes.
Ray Douglas,
Yes.
June Elkins Baker,
Yes.
Hannah Royce,
Yes.
and Stephen Buck.
Yes.
Motion passes. We now need a vice chair.
I would nominate Hannah Royce.
Is there any issue with me being a vice chair to this committee? Okay. I'm open to it if there are no other entertainment.
I second that.
All right. All right. To appoint Hannah Royce as vice chair, Ryan Haney,
Yes.
Ray Douglas,
Yes.
June Elkins Baker,
Yes.
Hannah Royce,
Yes.
Stephen Buck.
Yes.
Motion passes. We will now move on to the discussion and possible action to establish the time, date, and location for the next Policies and Procedures Subcommittee.
What is June 15th? Is that every other, or, let's see. The third Monday.
This is the third
Third
Wednesday.
Wednesday, gotcha.
Does it? Do we feel like this needs to meet every month?
That was the question I had.
Do we feel like bi-monthly is appropriate, or?
Or do you feel like that as we get to moving forward and
It would
then we can?
determine more. I think maybe start out quarterly.
Because we can always schedule a special meeting,
Yes.
like if there was really business.
I think so too.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, I think every month we'd be here for 5 minutes, and then that'd be a waste of everybody's time.
Is it the pleasure of the group, though, to go ahead and approve monthly and then make a decision on frequency as we wade into it? Because one consideration that comes to my mind is effectively we are blocking the meeting room in terms of scheduling for this particular room. And if we get into a pattern of of vacating dates, we might lose options for a date where we need to meet for some deadline. And so I concur 100% on frequency. I don't think we're a monthly meeting, but is it better to schedule and have on the books or to set the frequency now? I'm open either way.
Right, yeah.
And so is the time what we go with? The 2:15?
That's fine with
Not
me.
seeing the-
Yeah, 2:15 is what it shows. And then, let's see, this would be our first quarter meeting, and then we would need to schedule 3 more throughout the year. So
August 17th.
August,
Because the next one, so this
August.
is going to be our first.
yeah,
And so the next one will be August 17th.
If we're doing it quarterly.
Would y'all like me to functionally chair staff? Would you like me to help you and do that? Okay, so great. I'll jump into a chairmanship role. So what I have heard, Ryan, if you want to place that as a motion, quarterly meetings, and if you would specify which of the months of the quarter in terms of first, second, or third, that might be helpful.
Okay, that's fine. Sure, I'll move that we meet quarterly and that our next meeting be August 17th and the fourth quarter meeting to be in November 16th.
Is there a second to that motion?
A second.
really quick discussion on that would just give us 3 meetings this year, unless otherwise we scheduled.
And I think
Including this one, yes.
at any meeting, I guess that we could then say, hey, we need
Decide.
to meet again next
Okay.
week.
Any discussion?
Call the roll. I'm done with discussion.
Call the roll, please.
All right, Ryan Haney,
Yes.
Ray Douglas,
Yes.
June Elkins Baker,
Yes.
Hannah Royce,
Yes.
Stephen Buck.
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, we will now move on to the discussion and possible action regarding the purposes and functions of the Oklahoma Policies and Procedures Subcommittee.
So, not having been privy to the meeting that was held earlier today, my expectation on this agenda item and not being part of the structuring is a open dialogue about those areas that which we might want to explore as a committee. That might help influence potentially discussions on item number 6 about additional members and expertise there. But it would certainly frame for us initially the areas that we wanted to provide emphasis. So welcome any comments or discussion.
I think that, of course, as we're looking at this, we need to review what current policies and procedures are and then make those recommendations after we understand what's in place.
Hey, we turn your mic on.
I am on.
I was
Oh, you
trying
are?
to say that.
Yeah, it's active.
It's
They can't hear you, so.
Oh, I'm
Lean
sorry.
into it. Yeah.
And that's odd for a preacher. It's like,
It
man,
sure
I can't
is.
hear you in the mic.
just
And
love the
I
mic.
think that we need to get a copy of the current policies and procedures to be able to see what's in place before we make any recommendations.
Agree. Mhm.
Is that something the chair can do? Just reach out to Greg Williams and get those for us?
Affirmative. I will I'll reach out to Director Williams and we will have that conversation and secure that and circulate it prior to our next meeting to give us ample time to review it. I would also say, Pastor, I think part of our work will be influenced by actions that the full advisory body takes, and that it may be reasonable to think that as our larger group, there may be specific tasks assigned. It would certainly be welcome to hearing that as we progress as a larger body.
Right.
And I just want to, for the record, I'd like to see, yes, the internal policy and procedures currently, as well as I think there's a detainee handbook. I want to, I found it on the internet, but I want to make sure that it's the most updated, recent, and see how we can implement some human first language in a lot of that communication that goes out with those actual detainees would be a priority for me. But
That's great.
I have as my responsibility today securing a copy for this committee, a copy of the current policies and procedures from Director Williams, and then also a copy of the current detainee handbook. That both of those will be available to us for our review.
Other than that, I would just say, I think we've talked about it in the larger group meeting, but I think it's important for all of us to actually go through and take a tour. I've not been able to do that yet because legislative session has been going on, but now that that's over, I plan to make that a high priority early on this summer, just so we can see what's written, and then at least to the extent that you can see touring it, maybe what's going on in practice.
Ryan, I think that's a good point. Just as a show of interest, who has not toured that's members on the committee? You have not, June?
Not recently.
The three of you have not. Without objection, I'll also ask Director Williams to identify a couple of times that he might be able to extend invitations. I just completed I think, Chairman Still, I think I completed my 10th tour yesterday. So it's changed a lot through the years. That goes back multiple decades. So I will make that request. One thing I will tell you is that out of respect for the detention officers, they will often identify specific times they can accommodate tours. So we may have to be one or two different dates that are fit into their schedule, but we will certainly accommodate that. Thank you, Ryan. Any other thoughts on this? At this point, I don't know that we would need an action item. These appear to be homework assignments that I will take leadership on. Any other thoughts? Okay, seeing none, I think we are ready to move to agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action regarding appointment of additional members to the subcommittee, qualifications, manner, and timing of appointment. Is it appropriate for us to ask the chairman who attended one of the earlier meetings to state in the record what their action was that was taken in public earlier today? Chairman Steele, would you mind recapping how the other committee wrestled with this question?
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity to share this information. So both Hannah and June were present for the meeting as well and participated in that meeting, and so they may want to add some context. At the 10:45 meeting for the community relationship subcommittee, a decision was made. First of all, Mr. Chair, we reviewed the policy that the full board, the Citizen Advisory Board, had adopted at our previous meeting, which in essence said that in any given subcommittee, the majority of the membership should be CAB members, and that the additional membership to a subcommittee, should that subcommittee choose to add additional members, it's completely up to the subcommittee. But if additional members are added, the additional membership cannot exceed the quorum of the CAB members on that subcommittee. And I'm looking at Pastor Douglas to make sure I have that right, because he made the motion. So in the previous committee meeting, the quorum, the CAB quorum constituted 3 people, so that gave us the opportunity to appoint up to two members to the committee. The subcommittee appointed 1 member who had expressed interest from the community in serving on that subcommittee. And then there was discussion about the desire to appoint a correctional staff member to that committee as well. There was some thought as to whether or not that should be a person in communication, given the purpose of the Community Relationship Committee, or if it should be a person on the front line. And the decision was made to think through that and maybe gather some input as to who that should be. But the idea for the first committee, the other committee, was to add membership, but they didn't. They added one, and they want to take some consideration for the other.
Thank you, Chairman. Do either of you have anything to supplement? I think it's important to augment that my recollection of our overall CAB meeting is that each committee had its own autonomy in establishing what makeup of membership might most successfully allow it to facilitate its function. So in no way are we bound by the action of the previous committee as a matter of precedent. That is only offered illustratively as something a sister body has done in terms of structuring themselves. So with that, happy to entertain thoughts on this particular agenda item.
I would still love to see a detention officer on this policy and procedures subcommittee as well. Someone from the jail. I don't really have a idea or preference on where they fit in. I know a lot of things happening within the detention center are often those administrative fails, right? When the health department comes in, when other folks come in to check out the jail, it's usually like, well, we're doing this, but we're not writing it down, or do we want the meal, or do we want to write down that they got the meal or the medicine? And so that's kind of my 2 cents on who do we get in there to figure out how we can better alleviate some of the administrative neglect. I don't know what to call it, but that's my thought.
I would think that we would need someone from the detention center front line that are having to carry out the policies, and then someone administratively that are having to enforce them. I think that we'll get a more well-rounded view of what's needed, what's necessary, and what has been thought through.
I'm wondering what would be the benefit to having them on the board as opposed to just asking Director Williams if they could come here and address the board?
Because I think what we're doing is primarily concerning them directly. And I think having them as a part would give us a wider view. That's just my thought.
I think that them just addressing us, we would get their input. Them being a part of it would get them buy-in. And I think it is kind of a crossover, but I think it also helps in something else we're on is in employee retention. And so I think that if they have some say in what we're doing, it creates a better environment for them.
And I know I said this earlier, this is just something that's on my email. Nothing about us without us. If we're talking about doing this, and we're talking about doing this for the people that actually function, then we should have somebody that represents. And that will end up being buy-in, because if not, then I feel like, once again, it's just committees that come together and those on the committee make the decisions that they don't have any direct knowledge about. That's just my thing.
Well, that's why I asked what the difference would be between them actually voting versus coming in here. I'm not saying we don't listen to those voices at all. I'm just saying I'm wondering what the difference is between having them on the board versus just asking them to come quarterly and answer questions from us, give reports on what they would like for us to know.
Because I feel like that if they are part of the board, then they feel as if they are part of the board.
Yeah, I think it gives them ownership in that process, and I think it helps down the line. I think either way it's going to be helpful for us in our decision making, but them to be able to have a counted voice, I think gives them some ownership and would be beneficial.
So I heard it talked about earlier, potentially 2 people, maybe one administrator and one sort of boots on the ground type of person. Presumably, either of these people will need to leave the detention center to come here, or they would have to come here in their time off. Would the chair like to reach out to Director Williams and ask him if he wants to ask who would like to be on our board, or appoint people himself? How do we want to handle that?
Candidly, I think that's a fair question to ask. I think Director Williams should have the opportunity to voice, because staffing is a concern, and there are other logistical concerns that that I think he would need to wrestle with. So I appreciate it. As I think about as I think about this, and I keep going back to the agenda item, subcommittee qualifications, manner, and timing. One advantage of a non-designated member who serves as an advisory is it gives the opportunity to rotate differing voices through. So you're not locked into a single appointee who is going to express his or her preferences throughout the process. There is depth in being able to contribute voices from multiple people. But I think, number one, I would just simply say that regardless whether we talk about permanency or how they may be involved, we owe Director Williams the the accountability of having that conversation to get his insight into that to help us move forward. But I do want, as a matter of personal reflection, to say how much I appreciate the willingness of this group to find lived experience and to make sure that lived experience is breathed in to this process. I think that's extraordinarily important.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the need of having folks that are voting members, right? Because I know that if I worked in the jail and people were talking about policy and procedures, and maybe that was my thing, I'd love to have input beyond just coming and talking to you all. I know something that was discussed in our public relations subcommittee was, that we are the validators, right? And so for that subcommittee, we're the validators of the public and their concerns. This subcommittee, policy and procedures, essentially we are the validators of the detention officers and what we can do to make recommendations to help them better have ease in their job. So we're helping Greg, we're helping, them, and we're giving of our time. So I would say that, again, that voting piece is having buy-in, and it's not just, are they going to listen to me, or, can I put a motion forth with my own authority in that? And I think that that's really crucial, especially given that we're prevented in this instance from having actual detainees. I think that it gives detention officers an opportunity to go back to the facility and say, this is what we're working on and this is what we're doing, and it's going to make our jobs easier. Hopefully, right? That's the goal. So those are my thoughts. And I guess we have until August. I mean, we haven't talked timeline yet as far as nominations, but we could definitely, Chair Buck and I, find what works best for Greg and what works best for the detention officers. And once we have their input, better make a decision at that time.
So I think if I heard that, then you're recommending some prerequisite work and then an actual agenda item to finalize where we may fall as a group at our next subcommittee meeting.
It allows for some, back and forth with the detention center and their admin team. And basically we there are 6 of us. So we talked this out earlier, 3 nominations, and we would still have the quorum of CAB members. 3. Yeah. So, that still gives us, Ryan, whoever you might have in mind or what have you, to nominate for this committee too. It leaves, we don't necessarily have to have 2 folks from the detention center. We'll see what Greg and his staff think is best, but there's still more opportunity for who we could appoint there if you had any ideas or.
So with the, if I can summarize, I think that we do a little bit of due diligence on our end. We work with our general counsel to be able to circulate documents consistent within our obligation as a public body in between meetings so that we would be prepared to make a decision on both process as well as potential appointees in our August board meeting. Does that require a motion, or can we do that by consensus? Pardon? Okay, may I have a motion to that effect if you're still in agreement?
Yeah, I would motion Chair Buck's words that he just said.
That's a dangerous precedent. That is a dangerous precedent.
His motion. That's cute.
So I'll restate the motion just for precedent that we do a little bit of exploratory work at some point between now and our meeting in August. That we circulate some sort of background information, and that we be prepared to act in our August quarterly meeting. Is there a second?
Second that. Oh wait,
You made
I
the motion. You
Yeah,
can't do that.
Sorry,
Second.
There's my
The
second.
buttons aren't up here and it's confusing me.
Or any discussion on that motion? There's no discussion. Call the row.
I'm happy to second it, but it was actually Pastor Douglas that seconded it. Okay.
Ryan Haney,
Yes.
Ray Douglas,
Yes.
June Elkins Baker,
Yes.
Hannah Royce,
Yes.
Stephen Buck.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We've reached agenda item number 7. There is no other business that is posted for us to be able to deal with as a subcommittee today. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
You have to come up.
Ryan Haney,
Yep.
Ray Douglas,
Yes.
June Elkins